Not a chance.
You don't want Jay Stu icing you out. That's a bad place to be. Well, listen, pal, I'm done. I'll give you the headlines here, and then I'm heading for Z Hills. So always a pleasure.
This is fun, Jim.
And when are you on? Well, you're on for the next hour. I'll shut up. Headlines here, baseball boy and the other baseball boy next.
See ya.
From the Town Fair Tire Studios, relatable, reliable, and even relentless at times.
We're doing it live.
This is Boston's home for sports. WBC FM and HD Boston 98.5, the Sports Hub.
BC Media Group station.
Sports Hub headlines.
All right, you're.
The man has been absolutely on fire, left on left. Big hit from Devers. And this team that's really had a tough way of it since the All-Star break. Give the bullpen credit. They came in and cleaned up the seventh. They put up four zeros. They struggled now since the break. And this team gets a real big win, and more importantly, wins the season series against the Seattle team. Stays right where they are because everybody in this playoff chase won today.
And
big
won
win.
a series for the first time since before the break. And win it in thrilling fashion here by a final score of 3-2.
They needed that one the other night. Big win for the Red Sox. Now they start up a big series. Every series is big from here on out. Every series matters, whether it's a good team, a bad team, a mediocre team, doesn't matter. This is going to come down to probably a game or two in either direction for the Red Sox, which is why, again, that game the other day, Wednesday at Fenway Park, was so big. This is the Baseball Hour. It's the round table. Tyler Milliken's alongside. Milliken.
How we doing?
Missile. How you doing?
I'm good.
We got Kevin Majori, Ryan Beaton, intern Charlie, and you, 617-779-0985. Milliken, you and I have not talked all week, believe it or not, about the Red Sox, the trading deadline, busy week for them. As I said last night, now it's kind of time to move it forward, right? I mean, we've sat here, we've broken down the deadline. Now it's about whether or not this makes a difference, whether or not this gets them into the playoffs. As we sit here, starting the month of August, first series in the month of August, are the Red Sox a playoff team, yes or no?
Do they have the ability to be? Yes. I think their deadline, I gave Craig Breslow a B-. I know you said you kind of lean towards a C+, but I think when you see what they've done for the bullpen there, Luis Garcia, Lucas Sims, both really solid seventh-inning arms that do two totally different things. One guy, gets a ton of strikeouts and walks a lot of guys, and Sims, Garcia, keeps the ball on the ground, avoids barrels, and, we're already seeing the differences with Lucas Sims as it is. He didn't throw a single four-seamer in his first outing with the Red Sox. It's a guy who threw the four-seamer as his second most used pitch. Now he's throwing cutters, which is the pitch he discovered in June. That's kind of unlocked him. Beyond that, James Paxton, I think you look at this series against the Mariners, he got completely screwed in that game, right? Where he should have been through 5 innings and just 2 earned runs and got robbed of that. But I think plugging him at the back end of the rotation, I know a lot of people keep saying, you said he was only DFA'd because the Dodgers had no room. Yes, that was still the case. There were multiple teams chasing him at the time. The Dodgers, they still have Yoshinobu Yamamoto coming back and Walker Buehler. James Paxton DFAing him. There was never going to be a spot for him. They already have a 6-man rotation, as is with Jack Flaherty there. Quinn Priester, that is my favorite move of the entire deadline. I'd put my hand up and say that. Those are the moves I want Chaim Bloom to make.
Of course that's your favorite move of the deadline.
I have taste.
Like a AAA bat for a AAA arm. This is so on brand for you, Milliken.
You give me a 23-year-old starter who this year in 7 starts down in AAA had, ERA below 3. That's the kind of stuff I'm looking for there. The Red Sox have had such a hard time developing starting pitching for years now. We talk in the upper minors how they don't have those kind of arms. Richard Fitz is 24.
Dick Fitz.
Yes, Dick Fitz. Excuse me. He's at AAA right now. He's a year older, and he has an ERA close to 5. We're watching with Quinn Priester. ERA just above 3, FIPS at 2.8, I believe. Like, that's the kind of stuff the Red Sox should be doing. And if you believe in their pitching program, that's the stuff you sink your teeth into.
So here's the thing. Did they do enough to make the playoffs in 2024? I know you jumped to Quinn Priester. I jumped to whether the Red Sox did enough to make the playoffs in 2024.
Yes.
Will they?
I have my concerns. I'd 100% say that. I think when you look at what's going to happen in August and September, where Tanner Houck is right now, what we saw in the month of July, if you get that version of Tanner Houck, I have a hard time believing you're going to end up sneaking in there because you're not going to have that anchor in your rotation. Cutter Crawford, a guy coming off back-to-back rough starts. After that beautiful stretch you saw to start July, which kind of got you excited where he was getting these extra days of rest. It was all kind of playing into each other. Now he's giving up homers at a ridiculous rate once again. If those two guys sink, how are you going to carry this rotation? That's the reality of it. James Paxton may help, but I don't know. Maybe Quinn Priester factors in. There's a little Nick Pivetta 2020 with him, where if he stays down in the minors for now, it's about 20 days, you get an extra year of control. He gets me hot and bothered. I'm sorry.
Oh, my God. You should see, if you're watching on YouTube right now, you should see Milliken. He looks like a kid in a candy store talking about Quinn Priester. He threw his hands up in the air and everything. He's all fired up. Here's what I'd say about this deadline, Milliken. The issues that you just brought up with Houck, with Crawford, they're legitimate, right? And ultimately, the Red Sox are probably going to make or miss the playoffs dependent on whether those guys continue to give you something close to what they've given you all year long.
It's going to be a game or two, like you said, McCarthy.
There probably wasn't something you would have realistically been able to do to get too much insurance for those guys. Like, you're going to make the playoffs or miss the playoffs based on whether those guys are good or not. So what they were able to do by shoring up the bullpen, adding 2 big league arms, adding a back end of the rotation guy, my answer is they did do enough. It should be enough. From what is in their control, they did enough to make the playoffs. It's going to come down to a game or two, give or take. But you know what? Isn't that a nice difference from where it's been in years past? Instead of saying, well, we don't know if we're going to make the playoffs, so we're not even going to try, right? Their attitude is, yeah, we don't know if we're going to make the playoffs. It's going to be a game or two here or there. Something breaks our way. We go there. We got a tiebreaker over Seattle. That's the difference. Yeah, we'll go to the playoffs. But at least we're going to try. At least we're going to do what we can in our power to improve some of our holes, to fix some of our deficiencies, the bullpen being most notable right now, to try to make the playoffs. Oh, it's so refreshing. It's so different. Did I want them to do more? Of course. But they did enough. I think they did enough.
And that's what's kind of bothered me here. I feel like some people, and I don't know if it's just from the fact that they were hoping for more, if it's part of the Chaim Bloom era where they don't see buying unless you're going out and getting these mega pieces. They want that big, trade that the whole world stops for. But Craig Breslow came out and said, hey, I'm buying, and I think he gave this team what they are. Hey, they're out of the playoffs when the trade deadline came. That's the reality, and they had a 33, 34% chance of making the playoffs. He still bought. He gave them, I think, what they did deserve, and he was trying to do more, and when we would hear that in years past, you didn't believe it. When you heard the Red Sox were attached to this name or whatever it was, all right, but Chaim, was he really ever going to give up the pieces to get a deal done?
The interest kings.
Don't you believe when they were apparently in on Garrett Crochet or some of these other arms that they were seriously checking in and seeing what the temperature of the water was?
It's a good way to describe it. I think they were more serious this year.
More conviction.
Way more conviction. So much more conviction. Now, you can say that the moves don't excite you and they're not sexy and they don't move the needle. You're right. They don't move the needle, all right? But to your point, Milliken, and it's such a good one, there was at least conviction in what they did. I mean, I had a caller earlier today, say, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. The Red Sox should have sold. No. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, so why even bother? Get that attitude out of your mind, and that's the Chaim Bloom era poisoning you. Because for years you would have heard that. Oh, well, I mean, Bloom said last year, I don't think you really need to pick whether you buy or sell. I think you can do both. Stop it. Stop it with that. You do have to pick a direction. They have sent the message to this team that we went out, we improved. Now let's see where let the chips fall where they may. You might make the playoffs, you might not. But I'm not going to sit there in October and probably say, well, boy, if they had only had a little bit more conviction about what they were doing at the deadline, at least they added.
And it's what you did and how you added, right? So I think in years past, we've seen multiple names get to the Rule 5 draft and you just lost them, right? Shane Drohan, Ryan Fernandez. We remember Thad Ward the year before. It was like, could you do something with these guys, right? Chaim, could you have flipped them at a point before they left for nothing? And you kind of threw your hands up. And Shane Drohan did come back to the organization, still yet to pitch. But Craig Breslow went and said, hey, we have a bunch of guys coming up in the Rule 5 draft that have a fair chance to be selected by another team, and we'll lose them for nothing. Nick York, Edison Paulino, Ryan Zephyr-John, Nico Cavadis, Matthew Lugo. And he said, guess what? More likely than not, either we're not going to add these guys or there's too many guys ahead of them on the depth chart. Get something for them.
Can you just list those guys again and a little bit more slowly for the people? I want the people to ask, you to ask yourself, have I heard of this guy?
Nick York, Edison Paulino, Ryan Zephyr-John, Nico Cavadis, Matthew Lugo.
I'm going to bet that most Red Sox fans had only heard of one of those, Nick York.
Yes, and it was because obviously he was a first-round pick in 2020, at one point a top 50 prospect in the sport, right? But Nick York was your 12th ranked prospect, Lugo your 13th, Edison Paulino your 15th, Ryan Zephyr-John was in the back 60, Nico Cavadis was unranked. So, we are talking about different levels of prospects here. But even beyond that, Ovis Portes, who 29th in the system before he got dealt.
Had you ever heard of Ovis Portes? I know you've heard of him.
I have.
Majority. Had you ever heard of Ovis Portes until he was traded?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much.
But a guy with helium similar to Juan Valera, another guy that, people probably haven't heard too much about, but who went from the FCL to affiliated ball this year and was seemingly jumping, and people were excited. I give credit to Craig Breslow for dealing for him, because for a system that has had such a problem developing pitching, these are the guys you would cling to and hope for. He said, no, look at our draft where we just signed every single pick. First time that's ever been done outside, of 2020 for the Boston Red Sox, where they invested heavily in pitching, more than they had in really any year going back to 2017 when they took pitching in the second round, Tanner Houck in the first round back in 2017. That's confidence that, hey, we're going to develop more arms. Yes, this guy's a little bit of a lottery ticket, but, we're going to do one trade for Garcia more likely than not. That's going to be a package of stuff. Here's more of a one-for-one for Lucas Sims. Seeing him approach it from both of those directions, that's not a guy that's scared to make moves.
Who was the prospect who had helium?
Ovis Portes.
Helium. What would he sound like? We need to run that through the Squeaky Maz helium. What does Ovis Portes sound like in Squeaky Maz? No Maz tonight. Majority?
I will say in all of Milliken's rants, kind of what we talked about last night of the rants that I've heard on air in this room, for me to never hear that name, that means the guy really meant nothing.
Correct. If you've never heard Milliken, and I too, I do this show with Milliken every week. I have never heard, as part of a prospect rant, which always ends up somehow, even in the first segment of the baseball hour, it's always in there. I have never once heard the name Ovis Portes, but he has helium. And you know what? He can get in his hot air balloon and fly all the way to Cincinnati because he doesn't need to be here. You got a big league pitcher, and he's gone. Good. 617-779-0985. We'll continue here on the baseball hour. It's McCarthy, Milliken, Majori, in for Maz, Stu. You know, it's a Friday.
I miss you, Maz.
When are we ever going to see Maz again?
No.
It's maybe after Labor Day. We continue.
Jay Stu, I miss you too. He's going to get upset if we didn't mention him.
He's at Davio's right now. He's got he's kidding me. He's going to wrestling. Metallica. He's not listening right now. We continue on the baseball hour.
Stay tuned for more of the Baseball Hour coming up on the Sports Hub.
Hey, it's Felger here. Whether you're headed north to the lakes and mountains or down to the Cape and Islands, grab an iced tea or lemonade 8-pack from Surfside or try new green tea and vodka. Find the can with the sunset stripes. Surfside iced tea and vodka. Sold at bars, restaurants, and package stores near you. Surfside iced tea and vodka. Sunshine in a can. Must be 21. Enjoy responsibly.
The question always comes up, where to take your vehicle for reliable and trustworthy service, whether it's repair or just maintenance. I know just the place. Meineke Car Care is your one-stop shop for total car care. They handle engines, brakes, oil, tires, and yeah, they do mufflers too. Each Meineke is independently owned and operated. That's why I trust them to handle.
And the Red Sox have tied it. Danny Jansen coming through. And a meaningful moment for the new guy, a 2-2 tie.
Well, that's a good feeling, huh? Kind of joined this team for the first time. You've been in the same division. They know you pretty well. You go 2 for 3 the first night against the Yanks, and you come out here with a big knock to tie it up. Possibly knock him out of here.
a sneaky big moment. Actually, I don't even know if it was all that sneaky. The Danny Jansen RBI in the game the other day. It's McCarthy and Milliken in for Maz on the baseball hour tonight. We've got room for you at 617-779-0985. Good day for Craig Breslow that Wednesday against the Mariners. Danny Jansen, RBI single ties the game. Dom Smith scores the game-tying run. Lucas Sims comes in and gets two of the biggest outs in the game. This felt like one of those days we had the discussion about whether Jansen had a positive impact on Bayo, catching Bayo, which maybe goes a little bit under the radar. Bayo pitched better than he has. Maybe that's, the impact of Danny Jansen, who, Milliken, correct me if I'm wrong, is well regarded as a defensive catcher and a guy who works with pitchers. Is that correct?
Yeah, kind of how you heard a lot of people who were saying that about Reese McGuire originally when he ended up here. Danny Jansen's always gotten kind of the same traits, and when you look at his blocks above average, which is the main defensive metric for catchers, he's 97th percentile. When you look at someone like Connor Wong, one of the worst. In the other catching metrics, we talk framing and all those other things. But in terms of blocking the ball and keeping it in front of him, he's not strong there either. But consider Danny Jansen had one bullpen with Brian Bayo, and he went out and had that kind of start. But I will say for Brian Bayo, if he looks like that down the stretch, that's the stuff that could save you from Tanner Houck and Cutter Crawford hitting a wall.
Yeah, I just think the other day was a perfect example of what happens when you bring in marginal big league players. But, they belong. Is Lucas Sims anything special? No. Is Danny Jansen anything special? No. Dominic Smith is nothing special, but he belongs on a big league diamond. And that could be the difference between you making the playoffs and missing the playoffs. And it's such a low bar, Milliken, but it's a bar that has not been met around here for a while. And you should want more as a Red Sox fan. You should want them to be more aggressive. But that Mariners game the other day could be the difference between you making and missing the playoffs, because that's the tiebreaker. If you end up tied with Seattle for the final wild card spot, you're in and they're out because of that game. So don't tell me that little things don't matter. 2 outs in that game from Lucas Sims the other day is worth Ovis Portes. I don't care. If he blows out his elbow and doesn't give you anything else, you still won the trade. Most likely, because that guy's not going to turn into anything, and you got a guy who helped you win a game that could be the difference between you making or missing the playoffs. I just think this attitude that Breslow has is nothing special, but it's just different than what you've experienced in years past.
I need the conviction. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see 2023 where, say what you will, you got caught in the middle. There were opportunities to deal Rule 5 guys last year, and Heim wasn't able to pull those trades off. Say what you will about not being able to add money, right? But there were ways to kind of work on it, and Breslow did have the ability to add money, so it was easier. But you go back even to 2022, right, where he kind of walked the middle of that line and sent that confusing message. I think you heard it in Alex Cora's tone where there was room to complain if you didn't think Danny Jansen was that guy, right? Like the right-handed bat. Cora, before the deadline, goes, hey, the offense, look at what they're doing right now. They've been absolutely killing it since the second half started. I need more pitching. Then the Luis Garcia deal goes down. Like, it seems like you're feeding Cora kind of what he felt he needed, and just seeing his demeanor after the deadline, that's been arguably the biggest story the last couple years. You could see him sulking. You could see him upset. He's admitted to it. How much it kind of wore down on him and how much it really led to that real rough look for him at the end of last year. And that's why he was preaching such a different message before the deadline. But you can feel it with the team. They feel supported. They feel believed in, despite it not being the biggest additions in the world.
Let's go to the phone, 617-779-0985. A couple open lines if you want them. Dalton in Dedham. Hey, Dalton.
Hey, guys. How we doing?
Hey, what's up, man?
Milliken, I had a quick question for you. Who was the left-hander that the Red Sox drafted years ago? He had the Tommy John surgery. He ended up being a bust. We never got anything out of him. He was a big prospect.
Jay Groom?
Jay Groom, thank you. Thank you very much. So this is where I'm getting at right now. So I think Brian Matter, right?
Brian Matter.
Right up there. Thank you. So he's right up there with that Jay Groom comparison. Where the hell has he been? Why the hell have we seen him? They have all these prospects. They say they want to develop them. Why the hell isn't this kid up here? This kid's apparently throwing 99 down in Double A, Triple A, wherever the hell it is. Why can't we see guys like this? And Milliken, one question for you. If we do see one of the big three this year, possible call-up in September, who do you think it will be? Realistically, I think it's going to be Marcelo Meyer. I would love to see Kyle Teal up here, see what he can do, platooning with Connor Wong. But I just really got to understand this Brian Matter thing. Like, this kid is supposed to be a stud. What the hell are we doing? So,
can I jump in, Milliken, before you answer the question? You're overrating Brian Mata. Dalton, you're overrating him. This is a name you've heard about for years, but like you really, and this is how I feel about all prospects, right? You keep hearing these names, but you need to ask, what are these guys really? Nick York, talk about a bill of goods being sold to you on Nick York. I can't believe you talk about the big three. He asked about Teal, Anthony, and Meyer, who are their three legitimate, real stud prospects.
Who was sitting with them at Winter Weekend?
Nick York. They put Nick York up there at Winter Weekend for kind of like a future of the Red Sox thing. You know, at Red Sox Fan Fest, they're like, hey, folks, this is the future of the franchise here. Here's Marcelo Meyer, Roman Anthony, Kyle Teal, and we're going to put Nick York up here, kind of present him as a core four type of thing. Nick York isn't that guy. Nick York was just traded for a AAA pitcher. That's who he is. Brian Mata isn't anything. He walks the world. Yeah, he throws hard, but he hasn't amounted to anything. Like, he's a big name because he was at the top of your prospect list 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Milliken, when I started hardcore baseball in 2018, I did a whole episode on Brian Mata because he was their top pitching prospect at the time. It's the year 2024. He isn't anything, just like most of these prospects. So when you hear about a name and you get excited, just don't get attached to them. Don't believe they're anything more. They're only, of your top 30, there are really only 3 or 4 or 5, maybe in great systems, that truly do matter. The Red Sox had 3 of those guys. Anthony, Meyer, Teal. The rest of them, to be totally honest, are kind of filler.
I will say, for the Brian Mata situation, I do think if he had been ready like he was supposed to be before the trade deadline, he's been on the IL 3 different times this year. Ankle, lat, all these different issues that have kind of just popped up and knocked him off. He was going to get an opportunity because the bullpen was so depleted. Like, you could kind of see everything lining up there, and he was still sitting upper 90s. But I also will say, when you think of Brian Mata in those years, the farm system had been so depleted as it was kind of building back up, and so, lacking pitching that anyone that even had a small possibility of being a starter, right, that you could kind of cling to, like almost to the degree that, Wilcom and Gonzalez got some of this, where it's, bat missing stuff, it's filthy, it's close to 100. But did Brian Mata ever really look like a starter, especially since he came back from Tommy John surgery? No, he didn't.
Milliken, real quick, he's been in the organization for 8 years. 8 years, but he becomes a name and people get attached to them. He's got a 4.5 ERA of Worcester this year after a 6.3 ERA there last year, and he's been hurt a million times. Like, this is the thing. These are the guys that you should always, always, always trade, because in the end, they're a name. That's it. You need to put a reality to the name, and there's nothing real about Brian Mata or most of these guys.
I'll also add, for Brian Mata, he will be ready at some point, more likely than not over the next 2 months. Now that the bullpen has all these arms in here, it feels almost impossible to imagine, unless, Martin, who's making progress, one more bullpen, a rehab assignment, and he's coming back, Slayton a little behind that. Is there going to be room for someone like him to get the opportunity? Probably not.
Geez, if you're not ready after 8 years in the minor leagues, you're probably never ready. He did ask you which of the big three could potentially come up. I would say none of them in September at this point for a team that is going to be contending for a playoff spot, right? This is a 2025 thing?
Yeah, I'm pretty much there at this point as well. None of them have been promoted. Roman Anthony has looked really good as of late. Marcelo Meyer landed on the IL yesterday with a hip problem. 7-day IL. He'll be back after that. And Kyle Teal, still doing his thing. I do think you're going to see at least 2 of them in Meyer and Teal. Maybe they slow play it with Anthony a little bit just because he's younger and the strikeouts are still up. But if I were to pick someone, if you force me, I guess it would be Teal. And I'd continue to preach what I kind of said about Reese McGuire earlier. Maybe they'd look at it and say, Teal and Jansen, we can use Wong a little bit at second, at first, be a little more versatile as a roster. But I don't think we're going to see any of them this year.
No, AAA. You'll get promotions for them to AAA, which means they'll be knocking on the door. This really is a 2025 discussion. It'd be different if the Red Sox weren't in contention. Okay, give them a September cup of coffee. Here you go. You're going to need to win every single game you play in September.
I will add this conversation with the big three, and we're probably looking at, if they end the year in AAA, they go back to start the year and get maybe a month or 2 or whatever. Building the roster this offseason is going to be fascinating.
Agreed.
Because how often in a year do you expect to promote 3 guys to a team that the window's opening, right? Like, the fact that they bought this year, they told you, this may be, year 0 in the plan, but if next year's year 1 and they invest in this team this offseason, how are you going to formulate this roster when you expect 3 guys to take over starting jobs?
Such a great point. A good offseason discussion we're going to have. That's a really tricky thing. You think guys are going to be ready in May or June of next year? but then how impactful are they really going to be at the big league level? How do you implement? There was a great saying, Maz told me this. I think it might have been a Theo philosophy, although I'm not sure. But it's an old school baseball philosophy. The best teams find a way to implement 1 to 1.5 prospects a year. Because it's hard to implement prospect and while still winning, right? You think about the Red Sox in 2007; they implement Jacoby Ellsbury. 2013, Xander Bogaerts. Like along the way, you implement 1 to 1.5 guys. Implementing 3 guys when you're also trying to win at the same time, that's a tough thing to do. We'll do that this offseason, but it's a really good point by you, Milliken. 617-779-0985. Milliken has something he's hot on when it comes to James Paxton. But if we're also talking about Worcester, we do have an update on Tristan Casas that we do need to get to as well. Baseball Hour continues with McCarthy and Milliken in for Maz.
Sports Sub.
Unfortunate event last game in that first at bat. After that 3-1 swing, just came up with a lot of pain in my midsection. We're getting the details a little more in depth as we speak, and I'm going to Boston today to get some reevaluation done and some more testing, so we'll know more about it. But for right now, just a lot of pain in my midsection. I don't know the vocabulary necessarily of where it directly is, but I just knew it was something abnormal that couldn't let me play any longer in the game.
That was from April, right after Casas got hurt. I think it's important to state this is not today, that was in April, but I think it serves as a good reminder of kind of how weird and ultimately what this injury is, Milliken, and it's McCarthy and Milliken in for Maz tonight. He hurt himself swinging. I was at the game in Pittsburgh where he got hurt. I was sitting behind home plate, and I didn't think anything of it. I was like, wait a minute, oh, sweet Jesus, why is Dahlbeck at first base? Oh, no, this is not good. No, oh, God, why is Pablo Reyes in the game? What the hell happened? You didn't notice anything. He hurt himself swinging. He tore rib cartilage swinging. Cartilage injuries are weird. Rib injuries, not good. Are you really counting on this, guys? So right now, Tristan Casas is off tonight for Worcester. He's going to continue his rehab assignment. I believe that's the update latest on him. He's going to play on the road on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but we'll see ultimately about the target date for Casas' return. Are you counting on him, yes or no?
I feel like the Red Sox need to, but am I confident in being able to say I know he's going to produce? I'm not. Because I kind of looked at the Tristan Casas comments recently, and they've stuck out to me, and it's something that the Red Sox seemingly haven't talked a lot about. Like, the Red Sox always kind of said it was, well, wait and see, and once he feels right, we'll see where this goes. And Tristan Casas has kind of told everyone, hey, I can run and I don't feel anything. I feel that I don't feel anything. I'm lifting. I'm doing all this different stuff. I feel no pain. But when he's swinging, there's pain. He still feels something. Now, is there more damage or anything? No, but he's admitted there's ligaments and muscles around there that were impacted by this injury. So he's going to have to keep swinging until the point where either his body adjusts or something like that. But I think if you're depending on Tristan Casas, a guy who, let's be real, he hasn't played baseball in 4 months. He's basically, for a long time, couldn't even do activities. He was just visualizing everything, and I know everyone likes to joke about that, but that was
taken 10,000 swings since April.
Yes, and I think Tristan Casas is going to be one of the most special hitters in baseball. I really do. But to expect him to come to the Red Sox, 4 months along, be in a playoff race while still playing through some kind of pain here, that feels like a lot to ask of that guy.
I couldn't agree more. And I've been saying this for weeks on end, Milliken. I've been saying it from when they placed him on the 60-day IL. I was like, it's done. It's over. The season's done.
Alex Cora, do you remember the look on his face after that game? He's like, it's bad. It's real bad.
Right, because it's rib cartilage. It's a weird injury. And, it's the type of thing when it heals, it hasn't really fully healed yet. It's just going to take a long-ass time for this to happen. So he's either going to have to your point, Milliken, swing through the pain, or one day he's just going to have to wake up and he's not going to be in pain anymore. Again, the injury theoretically has healed, but it's so strange. It's so weird. I can't remember an injury like this. Rib cartilage from swinging?
They said it was like a car crash inside of his body. That's what his doctor told him. That was the wording.
Does that make you feel good about that guy moving forward, too, when it comes to durability concerns? I mean, he's young. It's a weird injury. I'm just saying people are expecting too much if they think he's going to come back and be like this impact cleanup style hitter for them. I'm not convinced he sees the end of the year.
It's a fair point. Let's see what happens on the rehab assignment. I do think as you see him play a week straight, if he's going to tweak something or if something's going to go weird, I would probably expect it to happen early on. But who knows? With this kind of injury, it could be just one check swing, right? Where he gets going and he stops because it is such a violent swing. I do think, as a Tristan Casas fanboy, if you're going to admit one flaw in his game, and yes, I am, and I'm proud of it, 3 years in a row, there has been a pretty concerning injury here, right? The high ankle sprain that kind of railroaded 2022 when they went in with Bobby Dellick and Travis Shaw, and we're hoping he'd take the job early.
Yeah, he's had a bunch of injuries.
The shoulder last year in the minors.
He got hurt in his first game in the minor leagues. He dove for a ball and broke his wrist, or there was a shoulder thing. I forget specifically what it was, but his first game in the minor leagues, Casas got hurt.
So that's a fair thing to kind of look at him and wonder if it's going to be an issue moving forward. And you do have this situation with Dom Smith, who, shout out to Craig Breslow, deserves all the credit in the world for going out and getting him, and Garrett Cooper at the time and saying, hey, I'm not going to take a chance on one guy. You throw the dart at the board, you hope you hit once. Dom Smith in July, 290, 355, 565, 920. Are you kidding me? Dom Smith has become an actual important piece, not only in the lineup, but apparently has become one of the more important guys in the clubhouse too, in almost a Rob Refsnyder-like role. And for a long time, we were just saying, hey, you DFA that guy. That seems very risky to me at this point. I feel like you need Dom Smith here for insurance alone. Obviously, if he's hitting this way, that's a hard decision. And making it work on the bench, you can only put Dom Smith at first base, and he's a lefty, while Casas is also a lefty. But if you bring Tristan Casas back and something happens 2 weeks in, what's your first base situation?
This is an area that I feel, for the most part, I praised the deadline. I think it was a fine deadline. I gave it a C+. They made the team better. The one spot I really feel like Breslow left this team short on, it was a platoon right-handed hitting first baseman. Because again, I'm just not counting on Tristan Casas to come back. I'd feel a hell of a lot different about their playoff chances. I still think they're going to make it, but I think it's going to be close. I'd have more conviction in them making the playoffs if they had gone out and added a platoon right-handed, first base DH outfield type, but somebody who can play first base. Given the Casas situation, I think that's a sneaky big miss from Breslow this week.
Well, you look at who was across the field from you, right? At Fenway over those days. You see Justin Turner.
I'm not a Justin Turner guy, but I would feel a little bit better about the situation. Again, he hasn't had a great year, and I didn't want him back in the first place, but I would feel better about Justin Turner than Romy Gonzalez.
And I like Romy Gonzalez. I do think he's a kind of player, one of the nicer finds Craig Breslow's had, and I think he should get time at second base as well. If you're trying to build some form of a platoon before Vaughn Grissom returns, maybe it's him and Sogard fused together as David Hamilton continues to, crater out there. But I do think at first base, right, finding that platoon bat, there's only so many guys who are going to serve in that role. For Justin Turner, the Mariners gave up their 29th ranked prospect.
Right. That's your Ovis Portes, who, again, as Milliken said earlier, has helium.
Yes, but I would even argue that's probably even lower in your system. But you go beyond that. Mark Canha was out there, another guy who could kind of spend some time in the outfield if you wanted more versatility. Mm-hmm. That's just something that kind of sticks out to me because you do have Romy Gonzalez playing first base, but do you really want that as the security net if something happens to Tristan Casas? I don't know. I think Dom Smith is going to be a really weird player they have to kind of figure out here and how they fit him on this roster because he's doing too much for this team right now.
So I agree. I mean, it's a problem, right, that if Casas comes back.
Good problem to have. I get it.
Yeah. I agree. You can't get rid of Smith. And normally you would in that situation because he's a left-handed hitter. Like, Casas replaces Smith. He's obviously way better than Smith, and Smith doesn't do anything else for you. You're already too left-handed heavy. Like, the thought of carrying another left-handed hitter on the bench isn't great to me. But I don't think you can get rid of him because I don't think Casas is going to stay healthy.
And I think if you're the Red Sox, this would tell me, keep him on that rehab assignment as long as you can. Keep him down there and let him play, the full 20 days, whatever it may be. See how
you're
long
not rushing him back, even though you're in a playoff race.
No, and I feel like they are pushing him where he's going to play 6 games in the next 7 days where they're like, hey, get out there. We need to see this. And Casas was pushing himself. That first game, he wanted to play first base, 9 innings. You never see that in a rehab assignment. They obviously made him DH after, saying, hey, let's take it a little bit slower here. But if I were the Red Sox, I need to be so damn confident that Tristan Casas at least is going to make it through the end of the year. Never mind the production, but just being able to go out there and hit. Because if you lose him, that first base hole, look at what the last couple years were before him. You remember how traumatizing that was, and it only amplifies how meaningful Dom Smith has been.
Well, I mean, you could always bring Bobby Dahlbeck back.
Please
right?
Stop it. Who's begging to get out of here.
Good.
If I see one more beat reporter, do you know what Bobby Dahlbeck has to be doing to make it so obvious he wants a fresh start somewhere else? Every time the trade deadline comes by, you see beat reporters tweet the same thing. It'd be really nice if someone gave Bobby Dahlbeck a new, opportunity somewhere else.
Why would somebody want Bobby Dahlbeck? Which is what I want. Which is one I want to ask every single reporter when they say that. I get it. Dahlbeck wants out of Worcester. He knows it's not going to happen here anymore. Bobby, you belong in Worcester. You're a AAA player. You're a 4A guy. Keep hitting your home runs in Worcester in that launching pad. That's a perfect spot for him. Anywhere near the Red Sox, no thanks. John in Hampton. Hi, John.
Hey, how you guys doing?
What's up?
Well, obviously you guys, as far as I'm concerned, are way too smarter than a lot of us. So what I'm saying is so right now, the Red Sox play tonight, at 8-10, right? So what do you guys think is like the Red Sox, as far as I'm concerned, they have to go on like some type of 7-3 or even 5-5 to stay like in there. You got the 4 teams now, the Royals, the Twins, the Seattle. So what do you guys? What do you think about what do you think the Red Sox right now with their? They have like a dynamic that if they do things right, they can win games, right? So what do you guys think about like the future here in the next 10, 15 games?
Tough schedule. I think that's kind of what John's getting into. Like, it is going to be a tough schedule. This series against Texas is sneaky big, Milliken, because it's kind of the soft spot in the schedule right now. You've got 2 series against Texas coming up in the month of August, surrounded by Kansas City.
That is the one.
At Kansas City. So they're going to Texas this weekend before Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at Kansas City, which is a massive series. I don't want to call this series a trap series because I don't think those things generally exist in baseball. We use that like in football terms, but you can't drop 2 out of 3 to this Texas team. You just can't do it. You need to win this series.
Well, especially with the state of the rotation. They haven't even named their starters. You have Jose Urena starting tonight, who, say what you will, he's not, anything more than a back-end arm. You are going to be seeing old friend Nate Eovaldi in this series, so that kind of sticks out there. But look at the Rangers. They're 5 games under 500. They're 8 games back of a wild card spot. Now, it's obviously a different conversation in the AL West as they try to pull themselves back in. But this is really where you kind of need to pick it up and push a team that is below you down, because let's be real. That Royals series, if you go out there and you have a series where you don't show up, it could mean the difference between you falling back to that 4 or 5 game range or you jumping into a playoff spot there. And say what you will about the Royals, who had a very similar deadline to you for a team that was right next to you. Now, they dished out for more elite arms. Hunter Harvey, right? That's an 8th inning arm. Lucas Erceg from the A's with team control, who I really liked, actually. Added him to the mix. They went and got a Paul DeYoung to kind of upgrade their defense. And then Michael Lorenzen, who is really another version of James Paxton, just coming over from the Rangers. His ERA may look good. Look at the FIP. It's close to 5. He blows. He's not very good.
And what is FIP again, as you explained to Mike Felger?
Fielding independent pitching.
What does that mean?
Focus on strikes, walks, hit by pitches. We're going to run all this way through. Takes fielding out of the equation, as Jared Carabas likes to frame it.
Carabas was really beating the hell out of you the other night on your little stream there.
I think we were describing
it. Thousands, tens of thousands of people who watch it.
It's 2 different ways. You can either frame it as it doesn't impact fielding at all. It just brings all batting average on balls in play to 300, so everyone's on the same scale. It's 2 different ways of saying it. I'm saying it in the more nerdy, complicated way. I get it.
I'm still not really following, but that's okay. It's a huge series this weekend. That's what you should be saying.
Yes.
That's what we believe. Big series this weekend, leading into a bigger series against Kansas City. James Paxton's going to pitch in Kansas City. Milliken has an important thought on that. Again, I mean, you're talking about, a game that could, decide whether or not you make or miss the playoffs. You have James Paxton going in that game. How do you feel about it? Is it better than Cooper Criswell? Better than a bullpen game? Milliken wants to dive deep on this. We'll do that next. It's McCarthy and Milliken in for Mass.
FIP is similar to ERA, but it focuses solely on the events a pitcher has the most control over. Strikeouts, walks, hit by pitches, and home runs. It entirely removes results on balls hit into the field of play.
This is the Baseball Hour with Tony.
have to say, you do this 5 days a week, and been in for Maz all week. You gain an appreciation for what guys like Milliken do, grinding it out every single day. I'm tired, which is why I'm just going to let Milliken do this final segment. You've got a James Paxton take that you want to get to. What is it?
I just like the way the Red Sox kind of jumped on that market really early. You look at what happened with Yusei Kikuchi, where you had Jake Bloss, a fringy top 100 guy, get dealt in that kind of deal where, hey, I'm not saying Yusei Kikuchi's anything, significantly better than James Paxton. Like, Kikuchi has a 4.75 ERA, the FIP's in the mid-3s, so I understand the level of pitcher there. But when you saw what the rental market actually was, and you end up trading Moises Bolivar, like a guy who's not even ranked in your system for a guy in James Paxton, where I don't think the difference is that significant overall, because say what you want about Yusei Kikuchi, his FIP and his underlying metrics for years have been saying he's better than what he actually is. He just hasn't been that guy. And if anything, it's been a rough couple months leading up until the deadline. But, Joey Loperfido was in that deal, who seems like at least a fourth outfielder in the big leagues.
These people aren't real.
Will Wagner, Billy Wagner's son, was in the deal as well.
Sweet Jesus. Billy Wagner's kid is a professional baseball player now. Oh, my God.
Think of him as like a Nico Cavadas.
This is the ultimate I feel old moment when you start seeing like Asante Samuel Jr. It's like, I was a kid when Asante Samuel was playing, and he has a kid old enough to play in professional football. What? So Billy Wagner's kid? Oh, God, just it's depressing.
We're here, McCarthy. We're in the future.
Continue. Yes.
But I just think the Red Sox jumping kind of ahead of the market for a guy in James Paxton who has the ceiling. We're talking about a guy who was hitting 96 against the Red Sox. It was 94.4 as his top fastball velocity in that game. But Paxton's talked about it. Part of the reason his velocity is down, they messed with his arm path. He's kind of been off mechanically. If you trust someone to fix it and get him on track, wouldn't that be Andrew Bailey? This feels like a nice version of, getting solid floor if you can just make him competent. But it was a year ago he won AL Pitcher of the Month in June. If you can just find somewhere in between that, he's going to be one of the better finds of the entire trade deadline. And that's not me telling you there weren't other moves out there. The Eric Fetty deal, that three-way deal. I kind of looked at that and I said, could the Red Sox have been there? Probably. Zach Eflin, another deal, 13th and 18th prospect from the Orioles. Could you have cooked there? The Jack Flaherty, not so much with the injury stuff, but
most of those guys you just mentioned, is there that much of a difference between Zach Eflin and James Paxton? Is there that much of a difference between, and I know Fetty's had a good year, but he's never had a good career, period. Is there a difference between Fetty and Paxton? And the answer,
I think so.
Okay, but the answer generally, Milliken, like, to be totally honest, if we're talking about back end of the rotation guys, and Fetty's been different than that this year, but if we're talking about here's a guy who's going to take the ball every 5 days, there isn't that much difference between James Paxton and random other guy.
Michael Lorenzen. Like, those are the kind of guys, and you got this piece for absolutely nothing. And that was Breslow jumping the market before it kind of exploded, which I give him credit for doing. That's being aggressive. Did I wish he did it with the bullpen a little sooner? Of course. But to that move, I applaud Craig Breslow. That's going and getting a guy you liked over the offseason. And I will say for Eflin and Fetty, those guys came with an extra year of control. I think that's what Breslow badly wanted. I think we're going to hear the Red Sox back in on Garrett Crochet this winter.
10 seconds. Cutter Crawford tonight, how do you feel about him right now?
Extra day of rest for Cutter Crawford, I think, is always a big thing. You look at the last two starts, they were rough. We should get a bounce-back start from him.
He did that in 6 seconds. Majori was counting down there. Majori wants to go home.
Milliken's fast, huh?
Wow.
That's what I do, baby.
They don't call him the 6-second man for nothing. He's Tyler
very
Milliken.
Quickly.
I'm Matt McCarthy. Thanks to Kevin Majori. Thanks to Ryan Beaton. Thanks to Charlie, the intern. Joe Murray's up next. See ya.